And so now you all should see the DESI webpage. And if you don't, just speak up and let me know. But this is the point view graphics. And we're going to start with the point view, and then we'll go into the plan view with DESI. But let's start up here with the top left. In DESI, you're able to select any point across the United States. And this is really thanks to the hard work of Chad and Paul, who puts the data in a certain format where we can extract it very quickly for any point. So the speed at which you're seeing it run is really quite incredible. There's no tool in the Weather Service that actually runs this quickly, that can pull this amount of data. So you can zoom in on this map and drag and drop this wherever you'd like. Or if you want to search by identifier, I'll go to Spokane, you certainly can. Okay, so I think for this demo, I'm going to actually go to Salt Lake City. To change forecast runtime, it's just this select box right here. As we add different data sets, you would change it under this data set select box. And you can group by cluster or ensembles. And so right now I'm going to leave it on ensembles. But what you're looking at is a 100-member ensemble. And this is 100-member ensemble, remembers the Canadian, the European, and the guest. And these statistics here are the grand ensemble. And what I mean by the grand ensemble, it's the aggregate of those three ensembles, the Canadian, European, and the guest. So if I'm looking at temperature here, these box and whisker plots represent the 10th percentile, the 25th, the 50th, the 75th, and the 90th. And if you want to look at the mean of the Canadian, you can just hover over the Canadian. If you want to look at the mean of the European, you can, or the guest, you can certainly do that. And we have several variables, at least on this overview page. But let's just say you only want to look at the European. We made DESI flexible, so you can actually turn off the Canadian and you can turn off the guest. And so now I'm just looking at the European data. And if you want to look at the European and the guest, you can do that too. So you can mix and match data however you like in DESI. Okay, so a lot of times, we have a system coming in and all you really care about is one or two variables. You don't need to look at cloud cover or CAPE or 500 millibar heights. So we made this by variable overview. So if I click this button, you can really inspect a certain variable, okay? And actually a trick to get to that same area is you can just double click on a variable. So if I double click on temperature, it will bring up this by variable view. So what I'm looking at here is just temperature. So this is Friday, May 20th, and I'm looking at the max temperature, okay? And as I scroll up and down, you can actually see the value for all 100 ensemble members, okay? We stole this from WeatherBell and we tried to make it even better. I love the chiclet charts on WeatherBell, and we made sure we had that in here. So here's the temperatures for it's next Friday, it looks like, sorry. And there's a histogram of how the data shakes out. So 3% of the ensemble members are less than 45, and 13 are between 45 and 50. And for Salt Lake City next Friday, it looks like most of the members are between 50 and 55. And as I move my mouse to different days, you can see how the histogram updates. And it all goes pretty quickly. And really, that's kind of the design of DESI, to make things as quick as possible to be able to interrogate this data. So let's say you're not a histogram person. You can change the style, and you can go back to the box whisker plots by moving this select box option. And then you can kind of see where the members kind of fall out. And let's say you're a plume person. We got you covered. You can do plumes too. And if you want to look at all 100 ensemble members, you absolutely can, just by changing that select box there. So again, with this view, you can just select the ensemble you want. So if you really only wanted to look at the European, you could. But if you wanted to look at the European and guest also, you can do that too. So really, you can mix and match the data however you like. Okay, so that's just grouping things by ensemble. Let's group them by the cluster now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press this cluster button. And when I do, it goes to the server. It runs Bill's and Paul's and Caleb's clustering code. And it does that principal components analysis and the k-means clustering. And it does this all on the 500 millibar heights. And it returns the clusters. Okay, so I'm looking at day 7 here. In DESI, it's dynamic. So, and what I mean by that is the number of clusters that are returned can change. So sometimes you may only get one cluster, sometimes you may get 4 or 5 clusters. In this particular case, I'm clustering on day 7, and I'm clustering over the West Coast, and that's that blue box here. Okay, and I got 4 clusters. And you can see cluster 1 has those higher heights over the West Coast. And you can see that where cluster 1 falls in the Grand Ensemble, if you're looking at the max temperature there, which is this top left, you can see that it's warmer than most of the members in the Grand Ensemble. And if I find a cooler solution, let's say cluster 3, you can see that the temperatures here in cluster 3 are actually quite cold relative to the Grand Ensemble. And the same goes with cluster 4. So it's a nice way to look at the data. Again, if you just wanted to look at cluster 3 and 4, you can uncheck clusters 1 and 2 and just look at the data from clusters 3 and 4. We wanted to make this as flexible as possible. And then we also have some options too. If you don't like this box, and this box that's highlighted here represents the window of the clustering time period. You don't like that, you can click this option button, which is here in the top right, and turn off this highlight clustering period. And now you can get rid of that box. But I find it helpful to really know which day I'm clustering on and which day I should be focusing on for the clustering. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps it up for the one-dimensional view of DESI. So I'm going to switch over now